What's going on? This is David W. Williams, also known as the Retail Trader. Appreciate everybody for coming through. So what I'm going to do a lesson on today is you suck at value and assets, so you lose in business and investing. And what I'm going to do is show you that you don't know how to actually value an asset. And it's going to be very, very easy for me to prove it to you because I'm going to ask you how you value an asset. And you know what you're going to do? You're not going to answer because you don't know. So what we're going to do now is start talking about why you don't know how to value an asset and start really working through. But it's very easy for me to prove that you don't know how to value an asset because I'm going to ask you, how do you value an asset? And you're not going to answer. And that's going to be an illustration that you don't know how to value an asset. It's just like me asking Drop 16 back in the day, where do you need to be on this play? And he can't answer. You don't know why, because he don't know. And I'm not saying that person, I'm just using it as an example. So what I've done on this show a lot of times is ask the audience questions about certain stuff. And when they can't answer back, well, then it's obvious you don't know it. But these are things that you should know as just a regular person in our particular society. So that's what we're going to talk about, right? That's what we're going to give a lesson on. And the goal is for you to leave and be prompted to understand how to actually value an asset. And that's what we're going to talk about. So really quickly, we're still having our Black Friday sale. So that is going to be at retailtrader.net, RT1 and RT2, 20% off. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is for this particular reason. We should have RT3 out probably end of next week. I'm going to get ready to go on vacation. So maybe the end of next week, if not early January. Then what we're going to roll into is courses that are going to be really based on systems. They're going to be very, very data driven. If you don't have the fundamentals, you're not going to be able to follow what we're doing. It'll be very difficult for you just to jump in the middle and get to where we need to go. So that's one of the reasons why we offered the fundamentals at a very, very low price. I've been doing this for a minute. I just didn't start teaching people about options. So I understand a lot better how to cut a lot of the fat because I realized that I was giving people a lot of information, but they weren't retaining a lot of what I was giving them, right? So we're trying to put people in a position where they can get involved in the space, understand the space, but still get exposure to what we're talking about. But if you don't have the fundamentals, we go into a lot more of the data-driven stuff, a lot more of the stuff really based around really pretty much running yourself like a fund and actually trading like a fund. It's going to be difficult for you to jump right in the middle. It's very similar to where if you go to college, you take college algebra. If your mathematics are not really good, it's going to be very difficult for you to stay on pace. And what happens is you'll get outpaced and you'll get left behind. So we're giving you a heads up on that. This is why we gave the discount. We know it's not for everybody. We know some people are just here for other things, and that's cool. But we're going to continue to move forward. And you can jump on board the train whenever you decide to, but the train's going to keep moving. And we're not saying that from a dismissive standpoint. We're saying that because that's really an illustration of leadership, right? I believe I have enough followers, and I'm not saying followers from I'm high and you're low. I believe I have enough people that are following what I'm doing to where we can continue to move forward and they'll be able to keep pace. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do here, right? This is going to be the last live stream of this particular year. I'm getting ready to go on vacation. And then, it'll be the first before we know it. So I probably will not do another live. I may drop another video. So it's been a really, really interesting year for myself. End of 24, I didn't think I would have the 25 that I had. However, it's still a blessing to be here. The fact that I made it, the fact that I make it through any day is a blessing. Grateful for the things that I've been able to do, and also grateful for my growth. A lot of things that would trigger me in the years in the past, I'm just not even really tripping on it. It's because I changed my conversations. Something I learned from By the Hood that's really, really important, and what I've tried to do on this channel is if you change the conversation that you're having, but also what the people around you are having, you'll start to see things differently. I'm having conversations with people and we're talking about strategies to acquire land and things of that nature. And how do we need to go about it and yada, yada, yada. A lot of stuff I just don't have time to get caught up in. It just don't even interest me anymore. I don't get triggered by the same stuff. And so that's something I've really tried to do is really change the conversation, change what people are actually talking about, because I've tested this audience for an extended period of time. And I know that many of you, when certain things to me that should be basic education as a United States resident, when asked these things, you don't answer. But I can post something else and you veer off into that because you feel very confident about engaging in those type of things. And you're a fully functioning adult in our society. Many of you got a college education. So that's what I wanted to do, is really change the conversation. We've been able to do that with certain people. Drop 16 has given me really good information on how to really talk to the youth and really what they're looking for. So we're going to continue to push more of that out. But I want you to understand is that you can change anytime you want to. Doesn't mean the change is going to happen overnight. It means you can make the decision to change and start putting things in effect right now. But you have to decide that's what you want to do. And you have to decide that you're willing to go through the transformation. And a lot of y'all just haven't made that decision. You really like where you're at. And that's cool. I'm cool with it too. There's a time in which I like where I was at. But one day you're not going to like where you're at. The question is, will you still have the ability to change? Change is not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me. There's things that happened over the past week and a half to where it would have triggered me. And I would have said, okay, this is how we going to handle this. And it would have turned to a whole different type of situation that ain't got nothing to do with the internet. Because again, I never made my name on the internet. I had a name forever jumped on here. Right. But because of exposure, the type of people I'm dealing with, the people that I want to deal with in the future, the partners I currently have, I can't get down certain lanes because that's not beneficial to what we're doing as an organization and what we're doing as a group. But it's changes that I made as a self. So again, many of you are cool where you're at. I've come here to give you warning that you're almost like a frog in a pot. You don't notice that the temperature's going up. You won't notice it till you can't get out of that pot. And I've been sitting here to tell you that. Some of you are not going to listen, and that's very unfortunate. But I've been able to convince some of you that that is the truth. And here's some of the things that you need to start doing to move in a different direction. Right? Because there's more to life than what a lot of us have been told by the system, what a lot of us have been educated to. And it gave us a very, very small or short horizon. And many of us have gotten to the end of that horizon and we're not even 40, 50 years old. And we don't know what's next because we don't know that there's something past what we've been exposed to. Right? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Again, you miss out on RT1, RT2 at the sale price. You can get it at the regular price later on. We're going to continue to push forward with that because what we're going to do in 26, God willing, is to continue to progress in what we're doing. So that's it. Didn't want to sit here long. Sorry for the monologue, but just wanted to get that off my chest because, like I said, this is going to be the last video, and I'm going to do even less videos in 26. I might drop one video a week, but I'm going to get more into my actual work that I'm doing and to try to become as successful as that as possible, because I kind of feel that there's a ceiling, and what I don't want to do is hit my head against the ceiling a million times. It's cool. I'm going to find me another way to go about what I'm trying to do, because at the end of the day, the goal was never to be the biggest YouTuber in the world, right? They can have that. So what we're talking about is you suck at value and assets, so you lose in business and investing. Here's what I want to ask you, right? We got a picture on the left of a slave auction. We got a picture on the right of a slave auction. How in the back in the day were slaves valued? How were they valued? Do you know? Were you aware? Are you aware of how some of your ancestors were valued back in the day? Did they teach you that in school? Are you aware of it? Have you learned it on your own? So the question is, how were slaves valued back in the day? I don't feel like waiting for the stream to catch up. So what I do is I just show you some information on that. So here are what we call slave bonds. And you can find these if you go to the African American Museum in DC. They're sitting right there in DC. And what we mean by that is that you could take a bond, and really the first U.S. bond market was really based on what we call chattel slaves. So, enslaved people, people that have been kidnapped, people that were undergoing tyranny. That's essentially what created the first U.S. bond market. And what they do is that they would say, okay, well, if they can produce this amount of labor, right, that represents this amount of income or this amount of revenue. Therefore, we can create a bond against the labor that particular person creates. And then what we can do now is we can create a bond on that. So that's what I want you to understand. They had a way of actually valuing that slave using something that was real and tangible. So the work created a revenue that we can now go create a bond based on that and sell bonds to those people. Slaves were also insured because they were assets to that particular plantation. So they created a whole financial market-based system on those slaves. It was way deeper than people just doing work. You got to understand that. But they boil it down to that because they know most people don't understand how markets function anyway. but there were actual legitimate bond markets based on the labor from enslaved people. So really people that have been human trafficked, we take their labor, we monetize it, and we create a bond market off that, but we also insure their labor just in case something happens to them. We can go insure this person because there's going to be a loss of revenue because of the particular person. They also insured the boats that came over here too. That's a whole different conversation. So that's what I want you to understand. So we understand how those particular assets are valued. So let me tell you a story real quick before we get into it. I'm currently in the real estate market. Okay. I'm in a major real estate market in the country. It would be very easy for me to just go get a property. The challenge is I don't value properties the way most of you do. And so it's been a challenge for me to find a property in the area that I want to find it at the price point that I want to find it at, based on the way in which I value properties. You can't get me on the kitchen. You can't get me on some of the stuff that they normally use to sell properties, because we know buying behavior is emotional. So if we want people to buy, what we do is we stir up their emotions. People are not rational buyers, whether they're male or female. That's not how this game works. People buy off emotion, they rationalize later on. Therefore, and we're going to show this, when you're looking at a lot of advertising around homes, it's very much emotion driven, especially if it's a couple. So it's harder to sell me a house because I'm a single man. So I don't have a woman that I need to get along with or to keep happy. So I would be open to looking at a house that I probably wouldn't be open to look at because I'm worried about her being happy. There's certain metrics that I'm looking at to buy the home. If the home doesn't meet those particular metrics, I'm not buying it. So what I want you to understand is that it's challenging for me to buy a home because of the way the market is set up. The market is set up to sell you a home based on how you feel emotionally. It's really not based up to sell you a home based on the actual value of the house. Therefore, when I'm looking at a home, I'm looking at what are going to be some of the major repairs that are going to need to be made on this property. And based on those major repairs, to me, that deducts from the price tag of the property. Well, they're not used to people making that type of decision buying a residential. Therefore, it can be challenging because what the agent wants to do is look at comps, and they have a very weak comp formula that they use, but they don't think that you know what the comp formula is. And then say, well, based on comps, this home is appropriately priced. I would say, well, no, it's not, because age of the roof is 20 years. Age of the HVAC system is 15 years. Age of the hot water heater is 10 years. It's not appropriately valued because upon moving, I may have to repair all those things, which means I'm talking about an extra now $15,000 to $20,000 out of my pocket once those things break down. So that's what people have to understand. Now, when you're buying a move-in ready house, which is a brand new house, all the appliances are going to be new. It's a different scenario. I'm not looking for no move-in ready brand new house. I don't have that kind of money. I don't. And when I say I don't have that kind of money, I don't desire to pay that for a home. Something else I want you to understand, and we're going to get into this a little bit deeper. I live in a major metro area. There's houses everywhere. I could have bought a house last year, or really this year, but really going to be last year in like 2 weeks. And I'm not saying that to floss on you. I'm not saying that to be big or nothing like that. I put a lot of work in, and I got a lot of blessings from God to be able to maintain myself to be able to do that. But I could have bought a house this year. This is what I'm looking at, though. This is what makes me different than a lot of other people. I don't want to buy a home because I know this is not going to be my forever home. I'm looking to buy a home so I can have me somewhere to live, to make it as a base of operations so I can move on to my next situation. It's just going to be a base of operations. It's not going to be my dream home. I need to do Instagram. I'm not emotionally tied into it like that. It's going to provide me some safety, some security, some peace where I get some quiet. And it's essentially going to be a base of operations. And it's going to allow me to have a home base so I can now move into my next situation. It's not going to be my forever home. So what I want you to understand is that a lot of homes that are being sold in this metro area, they will not have a large amount of appreciation over the next few years because of where they're located. So one thing I tell people when they're looking at buying a home, look at how your life is set up. I'm a person, I'm very active, working out. I like going to parks. I like being relatively close to my shopping, right? There's a lot of areas in the metro area that I live in where none of that is offered to you, but the homes are really, really cheap. So the payoff is you got to drive 45 minutes to the grocery store. There's whole areas of the city to where there's very little to no exercise facilities, as far as gyms and things of that nature. I live relatively close to a gym chain, where there's like 3 gym chains. I live like maybe 6 to 7 to maybe 15 miles away from me. So I live relatively close to 3 of them. There's not a lot of county or city facilities to work out and exercise in. There may not be a really, really good public healthcare footprint. All of these things factor into the value of the property to me. And they can be a reason why a property will not increase in value, because they don't have those things built into the community. So you can buy a home somewhere for X amount of dollars. While you're living there, you're putting money into the home to maintain it, but you're not really getting appreciation. It's not that you bought a $500,000 home like they're trying to talk about on YouTube. No, you can buy a home in this market for $250,000. And in 10 years, you'll be lucky if you can still get $250,000 out of that house. But you put money into that home the whole time, because the home is overpriced at $250,000. Now, they don't want to hear that in this market, but that's what I'm telling them. This home at $250,000 is already overpriced. This home should be $150,000. It's a $150,000 home. Or you're seeing a $250,000 home that's a full remodel. So you're going to have to put another 50 to 60 into it to make it move and ready, unless you want to do it room by room, which you can do, but eventually you're going to have to do it. Or looking at homes at $250,000, and the kitchen's from like 1975. So a kitchen remodel now in this market, you're talking about $50,000 in this market, $40,000 to $50,000 for a basic kitchen remodel. So you're paying $250,000 for it, but really it's going to cost $300,000. Because there are homes on this market to where you look at the kitchen and all the cabinets are missing. So you got a kitchen, but all the cabinets are missing, right? Like the police came in there and just ripped the cabinets out looking for dope. So what I want you to understand is that most people value home asset by their eye. I value home asset by what is going to be the repair cost to get this home up to a basic level. And then where will I be able to exit out of this particular home at a later date based on this neighborhood starting to appreciate. That's all I look at. Big up the Ray Gunman from that east side. I missed out on buying into a lot of the areas closer to the city and getting advantage of that early appreciation, because again, when I first moved here a little over 10 years ago, I didn't have the same mind frame I got currently now, because I wasn't having the same conversations. I wasn't hanging with the same people, and I wasn't ingesting the same information. So I should have bought in the Summer Hill when I moved here in 2012. Should have bought in the Grant Park when I moved here in 2012. I should have bought in there early, because now you can't get into Summer Hill if you don't have $600,000. But there was a time in which most of y'all couldn't even be in Summer Hill. You couldn't even be over there. Now anybody can be in Summer Hill, right? Anybody can be over there. But there was a time when most of y'all couldn't even be in Summer Hill, right? You had to be the right kind of person to be even over there. If you was going to walk around, it was just like that. So what I want you to understand is that I look at value in a home a certain way. I don't look at it by it has stainless steel appliances in the kitchen. I don't care about that, because I can go get that from scratch and then. I don't look at it like, you know, some of the amenities are there inside the home. I don't care. I look at it, what is going to be the cost of repairing a lot of this stuff that's inside this home that the person that's trying to sell it to me didn't want to repair before they put it up the market? And do I believe that this particular neighborhood is going to appreciate over time? The values in this neighborhood are going to start walking up to where when I'm ready to exit, I can exit at a greater amount than the cost I put into the home. Because I know people that own homes, they told me, when you own a house every month, you put money into that house. So this is why I'm not going to overpay for anything. I just got to sit back and be patient and wait for my number to show up. But do I want to move? Yes, very much so. But what I don't want to do is take a mortgage on something that's a bomb. And now I got a mortgage on a bomb. And I've seen that happen to people. Because the agent don't care. Once their contract is through, they done with the deal. They go into their next deal. So that's what I want you to understand. When you don't really know how to value assets based on your personal scenario, you now will accept somebody else's formula. And that doesn't mean that formula works for you. And I'm going to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So here's the questions. How do you value an asset, right? My personal bias is that most assets are overvalued. That's my own personal bias that I operate from. Doesn't have to be yours. But my personal bias when I'm looking at a home, when I'm looking at stocks, when I'm looking at stock options, definitely when I'm looking at cars, is that most assets are overvalued. And so when I sit down and talk to people, what they're doing is they're repeating me stuff that they heard from somebody else, but they don't really notice to be truthfully. Because that's the world we live in, where I don't have the creativity. I don't want to spend the time sitting back and thinking about some of these things. So I just take what somebody else says and I operate on that. But that doesn't mean that's going to work for your personal situation. Because if I was operating under what everybody else is operating under, I just would have bought a home somewhere and then would have hoped everything worked out. And again, I'm not looking to buy an expensive house by any stretch of the imagination. But because I look at different things in a home, because I actually know how to steward over a house, because that's how I was taught growing up, I know what are going to be some of the major repairs on a home. Why would I go in buying that if the price isn't going to be adjusted for that? So I looked at a home that ended up selling for way cheaper than what I was going to buy it at. And the roof was already 20 years old. My agent was like, well, do you see a leak? That don't have anything to do with the age of the roof. Why do I want to wait for a leak to spend $10,000? So she's operating under get the home and hope and pray you never get a leak. But the likelihood of me getting a leak north of 20 years is greater than less than 20 years. Now, of course, you could have a roof that's 3 years old and you have a bad hurricane come through. It'll put a leak in your home. But as your roof becomes more and more, becomes older and older and older, the probability of a leak springing up becomes higher and higher. If you get a leak in your roof and you call out to people to look at your roof, they're going to tell you that, hey, the roof is 20 years old. Let's do the whole roof. They're not going to want to do that little area because they don't really get paid for that. So now you fight to find somebody to just fix that area instead of do it because they're going to tell you the roof 20 years old. Let's do the whole roof. I'm not thinking like my agent. I'm thinking this price needs to be adjusted because of the age of the roof. But what most people do is they just repeat what somebody else told them. They haven't really sat back and thought about any of this stuff. Today's Sunday. Most people off. Today's a great day to take 30 minutes to 45 minutes just thinking about things. Not becoming anxious, not becoming nervous, like literally thinking your way through a problem or scenario. And writing stuff down and thinking about how do I need to attack this? How do I need to come at this? And the good thing about the era that we live in now, you can take a language learning model and you can bounce ideas off of that. And even though it's sometimes like you're talking to a 10-year-old, at least it gives you some feedback on your ideas and helps you with structure. But a lot of these language learning models, it's really like you're talking to a 10-year-old. I'm just really not impressed on that level, but I know how to use them for certain. They're good for certain things because they're just dumb robots, right? Used to be a skateboard company called Toy Machine. Y'all don't know nothing about that, but that's really what they are. They're just toy machines, right? So what I want you to understand is that my personal bias is that most assets are overvalued. The reason why the value of assets goes up is because of the hype machine of the asset. So there's a hype machine behind every asset. You could believe, hey, that's your personal, my point of view. I'm not going to argue with you. I trade this in real life. I just don't make YouTube videos. So the reason why I've been able to trade the downside better than 99% of y'all is because I understand there's a hype machine behind assets. Didn't say that we're going to jump in here and talk about the real estate market's going to fall. I don't do the Chicken Little stuff because that's not how I make my money. But my personal bias is that most assets are overvalued. The only asset I feel is probably not overvalued is probably energy, like oil. Oil's been not overvalued. Coal's not overvalued. Natural gas is not overvalued, right? But a lot of assets are overvalued. Food, those aren't overvalued. But a lot of houses, stocks, cars, even gold, Bitcoin, it's all overvalued. It's extremely overvalued. And I'm going to get you to understand. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, what is the true price of a real estate? What is the true price of a stock? And what is the difference between buying a stock and buying a business? So we're going to go now. What is the true price of real estate? That's what we want to ask ourselves. Because when we're looking at real estate, what are we valuing the real estate on? I'm going to show you some examples of what I'm talking about. What are we valuing the real estate on when we're looking at real estate? Because if all we're valuing the real estate on is how it makes us feel, is that the real true value of it? So then how do we ever determine what's the real price? Because how you feel changes day to day. And you know that better than me. So if how we feel determines the true price of the real estate, what we really think is worth, and it's only based on how we feel, doesn't that price change day to day? So do we have some type of metric that we're using to determine price? So let me kind of show you what we're seeing in the market, and then we're going to kind of get into some other stuff.
5 bedrooms, 3,700 square feet. It has 2 stories and is located in Sugar Land, Texas. This is the master bedroom. It's on the first floor. Check out the primary bathroom. It has 2 sinks, a shower, and a tub.
Okay, so it's $550, I believe. And off the top, the bathrooms are really not what I would call up to date. But because it's Sugar Land, I think it'll get that $550 price. But if you look at the bathrooms, they're really not what I would call up to date bathrooms. You can look at the sinks. You can look at the actual the vanities of the cabinets, and people that you don't have to really know construction, but you just been around long enough, you can tell that stuff is not really what I call up to date, which means it hasn't been built in the last 5 years.
And also on the second floor, you have a family room area.
Okay, same thing with the carpet. If you look at the carpet is very, very low tier. I'm not trying to be disrespectful of the property, but it's not top tier property. This is just a routine carpet they pretty much put in everybody's house that they're looking to turn around because you need to buy it and go put your own nice carpet into it. And I'm not saying that a carpet should be a deal killer, but again, what is the real value of this particular property? First, the actual bathroom, the vanities, the sinks, those things, they're not bad. They're not, beat up, but they're not really up to date. They're older, but they're asking for a $550 price. Okay, let's keep going.
With a movie theater room. To get the address of this house and get a list of all the houses for sale in Sugar Land, Texas, click on the link below or send me a message.
Okay, so that's his deal, right? So he's selling that house for $550. So let me show you another real quick. Y'all know who this is, because this old girl who got to make sure that Danish dude get his money. Let's go ahead and talk about her.
This is the price on this home located in Lakewood in Dallas, Texas, and wait until the end to see if you were close. Okay, here are the stats. This home features 4 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, and 4,500 square feet. One of the biggest challenges that people face when looking for a home in Dallas is finding a home where you're going to have plenty of privacy. And if that's something you're looking for, this home could be a great fit for you. It's tucked away in a quiet cul-de-sac, and as you can see, it offers all the charm of a private retreat. It's giving ultra serene vibes. This home is new construction, but surrounded by so many mature trees.
So it's a new construction home. So often what you'll see is the new construction homes go for a higher price point because everything inside the house is new. So they often can justify what they're charging for the home by saying everything is new. The roof is new. All the major appliances are new. The floors are new. Everything is brand new. So you don't have the age on it, but you still got to ask, what is the actual price of it, right? What do you believe it's actually worth?
And that gives the property that character and charm that we all know and love. My favorite part about this home was the primary bathroom. It has one of the best tub shower combos I've ever seen. I mean, I could literally do cartwheels in here. Now let's reveal the price on this home. It's currently listed at $2,340,000.
Okay, so it's a $2.3 million home. So then the question is, how do you value that? Like, how do you figure out whether or not that price makes sense? Does it just make sense because you like how the house looks? What is going to be the reason why we can justify paying $2 million for a house? Like, we want to ask ourselves that question, because the goal of the agent is to get you emotionally involved in the property, to get you emotionally attached to it, but especially if you got a couple, right? That's the goal. If you come in looking for what are some of the numbers around it that makes sense for me to pay $2 million for this, that you got to ask yourself whether or not it works, because it shouldn't work just because of what somebody else says, because at the end of the day, you got to pay for it. Let me go to another one. Okay, so that's a home, I think, out in Wyoming. Let me go check the price tag on that, but it's not going to be cheap. And again, we have to ask ourselves, what makes this home worth what they're asking for? And the reason why we want to ask ourselves that is because how do we determine the value of the actual property? So let me go to where I believe I have that property. Okay, I do have it. Let me go to where I know I have that property at. So that's the property right here. It's in Wilson, Wyoming. It's a $3.2 million home. So this is the property. Okay. Now you're on 7 acres. So part of what you're paying for is an acreage. Okay. So you got a home on 7 acres, but you're paying 3.2 million, but you're on 7 acres in Wyoming. And I guarantee you're not on 7 acres and it's oil sitting up under your house. That's not happening. They already done look for that before they sold it to you. So what makes this home worth $3 million? So what you see in the real estate market is something that we call what would a market bear? And what we mean by that is that they often put a price out there and they're looking to find out, can we get that number? And if we can get that number, then we just move forward. And the goal is to get the people emotionally involved in it to keep that number going up. That's it. It's not a negative thing. That's just what happens. I read the Wall Street Journal all the time. They're always selling homes. They selling homes for $50 million there, right? But the goal is, how can we get people emotionally bought into this to justify what we want to charge? Because really what we want to do is we want to see what would a market bear for this particular property. So we're going back to, how do you find what is the true price of real estate? Most people can't tell you. They can tell you what somebody else told them, but they don't know. And because the majority of the market is going to always be residential, why spending the time educating them? Just sell them on how they feel, because we know that how they feel dominates their life. So why spend the time educating them and then not hoping they use what you taught them to buy the home? Just sell them based on how they feel, because we know we're dealing with a population of people where how they feel dominates their whole life. So they feel one way on Monday, that determines their actions. They feel another way on Tuesday, that determines their actions, and they just keep going through like that. So since we already know that's how the masses of people think, we'll just keep them right there. So this is why when you ask people, how do you really determine the real price of the real estate? They can't tell you. They're not thinking at it that way. They're thinking about what they like, what they look, what they want in a home, yada, yada, yada. Not, to me, I'm looking at, what is it going to cost me to be inside this house? Because I'm not buying brand new, ready to move in. I don't want to spend that kind of money on a home. And I'm looking for a single family that's not a townhome. So you're kind of in a different market. So that's what I want people to understand. So then you have to build a team of people around you that are willing to operate under those particular under that framework. Else they're going to be trying to get you to buy stuff that you believe is overpriced, because again, they're going by what it looks like, how they think you may feel about it, yada, yada, yada. And I don't care anything about any of that. Because again, I could have bought a home a long time ago, and I'm going to kind of show you once you start getting into the market. So the next question is, what is the true price of a stock? What's the true price? Do you know? How do you really determine how much a stock should cost? Right? Do you really know that? There's a million ways in which they're going to tell you, here's how you determine how much a stock should cost you. My question is, why are you buying an asset that doesn't cash flow back to you? Most people can't answer that question. Why are you buying an asset that does not cash flow back to you? What's the true price of a stock? So you're telling me to look at stock XYZ. Does it cash flow back to me? I didn't say I only buy stocks that cash flow back to me. I didn't say that you shouldn't buy a stock that doesn't cash flow back to you. What I'm asking you is that when we're looking at the price of a stock, but really the price of any asset, how come we're not valuing it based on its ability to return cash back to us? And then you'll be talking to yourself. Because we're in a market to where the way we convince people to buy stock is we get them caught up in the idea of owning that stock. So let me give you an example. And some of y'all will give you a really, really simple understanding of how the stock market works. Okay, so I go public in year one. I'll go public at $50 a share. Okay. We issue out X amount of shares through an investment bank. Those stocks are in the market, which means we get people to buy those stocks. Funds, retail, it doesn't matter. We don't care because we got paid for it already. So that's at $50 a share. We have to continue to raise money in the market. So what I need people to do is to believe that we're a legitimate, viable business. So then in year 2, when we go back into the market, we can sell stock at $55 a share. So then people have to believe our business operations can justify paying what? Higher for the stock. But nobody's getting paid to own it though. Now the people that bought at 50, they not gonna go back into the market and sell at 55, but they never got paid to own it because there was no cash flowing back to them. Then in year 3, we do the same thing again. Let's see, can we go into the markets and sell our stock at $60 a share based on how our business is operating in our particular space. So then the people that bought in year 2 at 55 cannot go sell their stock at 60 to a whole new group of people. Because people is coming in to buy it at 60 now. You understand what I'm trying to say? That's how the market works. So now what do we have to do to keep this going? We have to create a PR campaign around a particular stock. And we have to create a narrative around the whole market to get people to continue to participate in what we got going on. Because the only way the investment banks can get you to do it is if you believe in the future, not only of the company, but of the overall market. But when you ask most people why they're doing what they're doing, like, why are you buying this stock at this price? The stock's not going to pay you a dividend. You're not going to get paid to own it. Why are you buying it at this price? They can't tell you. They're doing it because they're just really executing the program they've already been given. If you're in these markets, you are exposed to that program, and it works really, really well. The question is, what is in between buying a stock and buying a business? So if you buy stock, do you know that you are actually an owner in the business? Are you aware of that? Do you just think you own the stock? So what's the difference between buying a stock and buying a business? Most people can't tell you. They don't know. One, because they've never been in the market to buy a business. Stock market is very, very low barrier to entry. So pretty much anybody can buy a stock. Everybody can't buy a business. So they don't know the difference. Let me ask the audience a question. And I know Miss Williams knows this because this is her space. Normally, when you buy a business, when you buy the business, let's say you buy business XYZ, you get all the cash that's inside the business. So if I'm looking at a business, I think Tesla has $70 billion in cash inside their business. I think they got $20 billion in debt. So they pay all their debt. They still got $50 billion in cash in the business. When you buy a business, you normally get all the cash in the business. So you get access to all the cash. Okay. When you buy stock in a business, that cash in the business is really your cash, but you don't get access to it because the CEO and the board have not made the decision that we're going to give our equity partners access to the cash in the business. They'll say, well, we'll take this particular cash and we'll go make an acquisition, yada, yada, yada. But they haven't decided that they want to give you access to the cash in that business in the form of dividends or give you access to the revenues in the form of dividends. So none of the money in that business do you get to touch. So if you own Tesla, you're just playing an appreciation game. You don't get access to the money in that business. But there's a lot of money there. So why do you own Tesla? Because you believe that Elon can continue to promote a narrative and the markets continue to promote a narrative where people will pay more for Tesla in 5 years than they're currently paying for it right now. And that's how you get out of your position. Because really, for the majority of you, your whole retirement is based on the fact that you can exit your equity position at a higher amount than you did when you bought in. Without that, you don't have a retirement. And so because so many people in this country have invested in that game, the whole system is designed to keep that going. I'm not saying this is a negative. I'm saying this is the system. This is the game we in. However, most people do not know how to value a stock. So when you talk to them about valuing the stock, they just start saying all kind of weird stuff because they don't know that. Right? Most people can't even look at a stock and tell you, they can't even look at a company and tell you how much cash is inside that company. They don't know. They don't look at it. They just go by what they hear on the television, what they hear on the radio, what this person told them, yada, yada, yada. but they have no idea how to really look at that business. But when you go into the private space, when you buy a business, historically, you get the cash inside that business unless there's some type of thing going on where you don't get access to it. I wouldn't buy a business on the private market if I couldn't get access to the cash that's inside that business. So that's what I want you to understand. We don't often understand how to value things because we don't really know what is actually going on around us. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about with a young lady who gets paid. I don't want to say to hype up the market, but she does get money to communicate about the market.
We've seen the AI trade has delivered enormous returns for markets over the last 2 years. And we're, I think, all kind of experiencing this sigh of relief, or this exhale, I guess, in a way. We've moved from a rising tide lifting all boats to more choppier waters. And investors are being far more scrutinizing when it comes to how much is being spent, the quality of those investments. We're seeing as this AI trade continues to grow in its enormity, the investment being made and the moats and such being questions and shifting. So I think it's quite healthy that we're focusing on selectivity. I mean, this is what you want to see to prevent a dot-com bubble. And when looking at valuations today, you know, we don't really see a big risk of that happening amongst the big tech firms.
So even these worries about debt in particular, and you are coming to us with a view.
Okay, so, you know, big up to her and what she got going on. You know, we're not taking nothing from her, but I want you to understand what her job actually is, right? So Stephanie Aliga, or Aliaga, I don't know how to pronounce that, global market strategist on the JP Morgan Asset Management Market Insight team based out of New York. Her job is really to just communicate about the market to JP Morgan clients, fund managers, personal, private clients, yada, 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 but also through media. Really, she's just a communication person. And her job is to keep the spin going around the market because JP Morgan, they got a big book they need to get rid of. And also their job is to keep the markets healthy. This is where JP Morgan operates. They don't want people to have a pessimistic view about the market. So they have to hire people to keep this thing going. Again, don't take this and have a negative view about it because I didn't say that. What I want you to understand, what you should have a negative view about is you don't know how to value things properly. You don't have a metric, you don't have a model, yada, yada, yada. You don't. So you just go by what people tell you. But this is all part of the system. But why are you buying something that doesn't cash flow back to you? Now, I didn't say you shouldn't buy something unless it cash flows back to you. I asked, how do you value an asset that never cash flows back to you? What's your valuation? So that's what I'm telling you. So this whole system is based on, especially in the stock market, getting you to believe that 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, you'll be able to exit out at a higher price than what you bought in, because during that time, they're never going to cash flow back to you. It just won't happen. That's not their goal. And they're making that decision at the C-suite level, at the board level. So they're never going to cash flow back to you. So you're hoping and wishing, but you're owning something that's never going to put money back into your pocket. So then how do we value it? They can do discounted cash flows all they want to. That's cool. But it doesn't put money back in your pocket at any time until you sell it. So again, we're not saying it's a negative. I own stocks. But what I'm saying is that I don't necessarily value stuff the way they'll teach you how to value when you take finance classes. Because that's just something that the industry has created to justify what they're doing. You don't really learn that till you get into these spaces, because everybody needs to justify what they're doing to keep the money coming in. But when you really sit down and ask people, well, how do you really put a value on this? Who knows? Right? Why am I buying Tesla at almost $500 a share now? And it's not cash flowing anything back to me, but they have the ability to do it, but it doesn't. Because I believe they're going to put out a robot and a robot car, and that's going to bring in more money. Then I believe that people will be willing to buy Tesla at $700 a share so I can get out at $500 a share. That's the only reason I'm in the deal. But while you're waiting on that, you're not making any money off Tesla. So this is why people watch the stock every day. Because while they own it, it's not cash flowing. It's never going to cash flow to them because it's not set up to do that. So then how do you put a value on it? So that's what I want you to understand. When we don't really learn how to value assets for your own personal situation, you can only go by what somebody else tells you the value is. But I can discount cash flows to a company and make it say anything I want it to say. Once you learn how to do that exercise, they teach it. You can go to community college right now and learn how to do it. I can use discounted cash flows and make that statement say anything I wanted to say just based on my model. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen because it's a projection out into the future. I do not believe that Tesla's going to be able to launch robots at 20,000 per, and there's going to be a market for those robots. I don't believe that. I do believe that robots are going to be a commodity like cars. So I don't believe that they're going to be able to corner the robot market with these personal robots. I don't believe that. So by the time they finally get their robot to market, nobody's going to care anymore. And we're supposed to believe that's going to be the revenue driver. But Elon has been able to sell that to the masses, that that's going to be a massive revenue driver. So buy it at 500, because by the end of the decade, Tesla's going to be $1,000 a share. But between them 5 years, they're never going to pay you to own the stock. So you got to buy into the narrative, because what else you got to hold on to? You like the woman where the guy has been with you for 10 years and he tell you, well, next year we're going to get married. He been telling you that for the past 10 years. Y'all ain't never going to get married, but he going to keep telling you that because why? That's how he keep getting access to you. But y'all never going to get married. So that's what I want you to understand. So you might as well buy into the story he's spinning, because you ain't going to get nothing else from him to do. Right? So that's what I want you to understand. When you don't have a way of valuing this stuff on your own, you can only go by what somebody else is telling you. Homes in the Atlanta market that are up to 250. It's a home, bed and bath is whatever. I don't want to get too granular. Okay, so we're looking at Gresham, right? So I'm going to show you. I could have bought into Gresham. Let me go ahead and get rid of my screen. I could have bought into Gresham 6 months ago, right? 6 months ago, I could have bought into Gresham. Okay. What I'm saying, that if anybody knows how to make this full screen on Zillow, let me know. I don't know how to do this to where the actual home's a full screen. I still got this split screen, which to me is very weird. But here's the issue with Gresham. What I talked about before with the amenities, they're not there. The access to gyms, the public healthcare footprint, the access to parks, things of that nature, they're not there. So I would buy into Gresham at a certain number because it would be relatively inexpensive. But then my life will become harder because I don't have those other things. So now to go to the gym, I got to drive 45 minutes. To go grocery shopping somewhere where I like what they're selling me, I got to go another 45 minutes. But I'm still considered relatively inside the city. This is the issue Atlanta has. I call it has like these barren sections where the section is not relatively, we don't have a big commercial footprint in the section. I should say it like that. Where it's big residential, but very little commercial footprint. So to get involved in commerce, you got to go to a whole other part of the city. That's one of the downsides of Atlanta. They haven't figured out that piece yet. Because Gresham, and this has to do with racism, segregation, yada, yada, yada. Gresham historically was working class Black people that worked at the airport. So if you look at the map, here's Gresham right here, right? Here's the airport. So all you got to do is jump on the highway and you're right there by the airport. So Gresham, for a very long time, was working class Black folks that worked at the airport. However, it never stayed like that long enough for Black people to build out their own commercial districts. So as Atlanta started to desegregate, and also you had a lot of social desegregation, Black people that had the means moved to other parts of the metro. So a lot of these historically Black areas, now what happens? The homes get bought by investors and they rent the homes out to lower income Black folks just to get somebody in a home to get it cash flowing. So now what you have is you have neighborhoods flip from being working class, upper, I would say maybe lower middle class, to lower income areas. And we're not just talking about Gresham specifically, we're just talking about in general. And then you also don't have no commercial footprint. So if you go to like 23, this is not a real big commercial footprint on this side of Atlanta. It's really not there. So you're forced to continue to go to other areas just to engage in commerce, because what we weren't able to do is keep that area a certain level to where we now build out a commercial footprint. That's something I talk about all the time. I think people don't get it. I think a lot of people are used to driving, an hour just to go grocery shopping. I'm not, but I think a lot of people are. Here's another area, right? College Park, East Point. So College Park, East Point is starting to gentrify. You have a really, really big commercial footprint on the other side of 285 off of 6. But this whole area here, there's really not a lot of shopping. There's not a lot going on, because if you go off Camp Creek, all you got on Camp Creek is park and ride and gas stations, where Camp Creek really should be full of nothing but hotels and restaurants and grocery stores. But they're not there because historically what was in College Park. So we have an area right by the airport, right on Camp Creek right here, where this whole area from Camp Creek to 285 should be nothing but restaurants, hotels, and grocery stores. It's not there. So everybody that's living in this section here, you have to really travel to go to a commercial district because it's really not there. But I could have bought a house over here a long time ago. So if I'm looking to buy in these areas, because I have to do so much travel to do what I need to do, I'm not going to pay what they're asking for, because my whole lifestyle got to change just because I'm over here. And I'm not used to living like that. I'm from West Orlando. I live right off Colonial. The benefit of living in Orlando is that we have a state road called Highway 50. Highway 50 cuts through the whole city. Highway 50 is nothing but restaurants, grocery stores, car lots, small businesses, yada, yada, yada. It cuts through the whole city of Orlando. It goes all the way from the west side of Winter Garden all the way to the east side out there by UCF. It's the same thing no matter what part of Highway 50 you're on. And then what they did is they built residential off of Highway 50, because I live literally half a football field away from Highway 50. That's what I'm used to. I live in an area right now in the metro to where I live right off a big commercial district. So if I want to go grocery shopping, I want to go look at a car, I want to go do anything I pretty much want to do from the commercial side, I live right off of it. So it's really easy for me to do. I live within a few miles of 3 or 4 different gyms. I live by small businesses that do dental, that do eye doctors, things of that nature. There's a really, really robust commercial sector where I live. Other parts, it doesn't exist. So to me, the home price needs to be adjusted for that. Everybody don't see it that way. I do. So I'm not going to pay $250,000 to buy a fixer-upper in a certain part of the city where I got to sink another $50,000 into it, and then I live an hour away from my gym. I'm not doing that because I go to the gym 5 times a week. So now if I was one of the people, I don't go to the gym once a week if I'm lucky, and I take the whole Christmas season off going to the gym, I'm not tripping on that. I'm just tripping on how much the house costs. But I understand you want to kind of get something kind of based on how you live. And so I know is that I'm either going to spend the money in traffic, which is really bad here, spend the money on gas, which you never know how much that's going to cost, put wear and tear on my car just to get around how I need to get around, or I can live closer to those things. I just got to find a number that works for me. So that's how I value in the home. Everybody don't value it that way. But one of the downsides of this particular city is I can show you whole sections where there's really not a lot of shopping. There's really not a really, really big commercial footprint. There's not a lot going on. Here's off Cascade. I had my last event on the west side of Cascade. There's a decent stuff over there, right? Here's another. So let me show you this area here. Here's Collier Heights. This is one of the first black suburbs in Atlanta. The mayor of Atlanta supposedly he lives here. What's the name of the guy that got the really, really big airport contract? He come from a family of builders. His old home is still in Collier Heights, or they may still own that home. The problem with Collier Heights is there's nothing around it. So you want to go grocery shopping, you got to go off 78. There is a Publix over here, but there's nothing here on 278. I'm sorry, on 278, which turns into 78. There's nothing here. So from 78 to 285, all the way into the city, there's nothing there. It's a commercial business wasteland. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm saying that to be real from an appraisal standpoint with a business eye. From 78 to 285, from 78 all the way into the city, it's a commercial business wasteland. There's a few gas stations. That's about it. There's a lot of businesses that are boarded up. There's a lot of businesses on this strip that are doing no activity. So if you live in Collier Heights and you want to go shopping, you want to go to a doctor, you want to go to a dentist, you're always having to travel out of your area. There's really nothing here on Hamilton Homes, which is cuts right through it north and south. So this is one of the issues. Really nice homes here, but there's nothing else here. And you're literally considered inside the city. You're inside 278, you're inside the perimeter, but there's nothing here. You don't have that kind of issue, right? If you live like in Brookhaven. Okay, you live in Brookhaven right here, everything you need is in this area. You live over here around Buckhead, everything you need is in this area. Okay, you live around here, Atlantic Station, even though Atlantic Station having some issues, everything you need is in this area, or it's relatively close to this area. You're not sequestered. They're building out what we call West Midtown here. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, is I'm just not looking at how much they charging for the home. I'm looking at what's going on in the area, and are they building and developing that area out? Because I had a conversation with somebody earlier this week, and we were talking about what areas of the city are they looking to improve in the metro that is relatively inexpensive now, but based on the changes that they're making, like building out the Beltline, things of that nature, we believe the real estate is going to appreciate. So that's what I'm trying to use these language learning models to give me information on currently right now today, because they're still building out areas of the city. But these areas here, Grant Park, I should have moved into here when I first moved to Atlanta in 2012. They're getting ready to gentrify Mechanicsville, right? They've already done Summerhill. They're getting ready to do Pittsburgh. They just, off Georgia Avenue right here, they just built the Publix right here off Georgia Ave. They're getting ready to just really blow this whole area up right here. So everything in this area now, you see up to 250, there's no homes available up to 250. Right? Until you get out here. Let me see what this house look like. It's a 1-1 for 250. 770 square feet for 250. Right? This is studio. Really is land. This is a 3-1, 1,300 square feet for 200,000. And this is a 3-1, 1,000 square feet for 200,000. $10,000 square foot lot though. I want to see the street view. This it right here. So these are the last remnants of that home. You're lucky to have parking over here. So that's what I want to tell you, is that I'm looking at the things around that particular area, because I looked at buying in an area closer to downtown, and I realized that the LA Fitnesses in that area don't have pools. I swim twice a week. That's one of the things I do to stay in shape. So I realized the LA Fitnesses in that area don't have pools. So I would have to drive to a LA Fitness way, way, way out twice a week just to go swimming. I say this might not work for me. What would have worked though, looking at that area, is that they're building that Publix right off here, off Georgia Avenue. So it's really going to really explode this area over here by Grant Park and Summerhill, because they're building this Publix right here on Georgia Ave. So it's going to really make this area get big. It's also going to blow up Pittsburgh. So the next area that they're really going to start gentrifying is Pittsburgh. That's going to be the next area. You can still get into Pittsburgh at a decent price, and you just got to hold it out. I don't want to live on this side of the tracks, but it is what it is. But you can still get into Pittsburgh. I remember, again, when I first moved here, if you weren't from Pittsburgh and you ain't know people over there, you sure wouldn't go over there. But we in a different era now. It's not like that anymore. Because if they could gentrify Kirkwood, they could gentrify anything. Right? If they could gentrify Kirkwood, they can gentrify any place in this city. I guarantee you that. So that's what I want you to understand. I don't look at just the price. I figure out, how do I value it based on my own personal life, based on my own personal objectives, and I take it from there. I don't go by what nobody on YouTube tell me. I don't go by what these people tell me, because they are getting paid to keep a narrative going. I'm not against it. That's their business, but it doesn't mean it works for me. And so, agents are going to tell you what they're going to tell you. They in the sales game. That's what they're going to do. They're trying to move inventory. I'm not mad at them. get your money. But it doesn't mean that it works for me. And the last thing I want to do is buy a home somewhere, and I'm dissatisfied with it, but I gotta pay that mortgage, because in the day, still gotta pay that mortgage unless you're gonna get foreclosed. So that's gonna be it. We're gonna get up on out of here. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Last video of the year. Let me see. Is that it? This might be it. Yeah, there we go. So Raygun, man, appreciate the $2 super chat. Miss Phoenix, man, big up to Toledo, Ohio. Appreciate the $5. Cedric Webb, appreciate the $4 super sticker. On the move, say peace to you. Wondering how to get in with you. YouTube won't let me in the description. Appreciate the perspective. You should better hit me up on YouTube through my email I got attached to YouTube if you want to ask me a question about something. Appreciate becoming a new member. So Mr. Cedric Webb says, moved to Salt Lake City last year. Here's why I bought. Salt Lake City is building 2 stadiums, 1 Major League Baseball, 1 minor league baseball, 2034 Olympics. I didn't know that. That's big. So next door to medium-sized Mormon church, also one of the fastest growing cities. Okay, that's a good move. Yeah, I didn't know y'all was going to get the Olympics. That's going to be crazy. I wonder if they're going to lower the alcohol regulations when the Olympics come out there. That's going to be interesting. Do you see where to buy using City Interactive Map or Development Explorer for a particular city? So here's what I did. I don't necessarily 100% understand your question. What I did was I went into a language model and I asked them, what are going to be the areas of the city that are going to be growing over the next decade? And then once they gave me those areas, then I did a deeper dive into those areas. But another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the economic plans from all those particular areas, and I'm going to read them one, and then I'm going to feed them back into that model and ask the model what are they getting from it, and then I'm just going to compare and contrast. So the most important thing is I'm going to actually do the reading, because again, these models are like 10-year-olds. So, you know, this attitude that this artificial intelligence is false. They're like a 10-year-old. They're like a smart 10-year-old, but they're still like a 10-year-old. So that's what I'm going to do to try to do more research on what areas I want to look at, because one of the biggest challenges is where I'm currently at is that a lot of the real estate to me is overpriced because there's so much demand on real estate. So the question is, what are some of the areas that are maybe a little bit farther out that people are going to get pushed to because they're not going to be able to buy? They're not going to be able to buy in some of the areas that are going to be in much more demand, especially inside the city. Anything kind of close to downtown, now even south of 20, is going to be very much in demand. A lot of people are going to get pushed out because they just can't afford there, or they don't want to buy what's being offered there. But that's a good question. Appreciate the super chat. So Ray Gunn says, issue with businesses coming to aggression is insurance. See, but here's the thing, Ray Gunn. When we tell people that, they don't want to hear it. When I tell people that when the Asians put a store in a low-income area, the reason why they're going to charge what they're charging is because their insurance is higher, right? And because theft is higher. We have to want to do business with, when our people offer us business solutions, we have to want to make it work so they can keep doing what they're doing. Because then all you get is Asians and Arabs who don't respect you. They play a lot of games because their attitude is that it's so cost prohibitive for me to be over here. I got to charge an arm and a leg, so I'm going to charge it to people over here. So when our people come in with the solution, we got to want to try to make it work for them. But I 100% agree with you. The insurance costs can be so high because of what's going on over there to where people say, you know what, I'm cool on that. You know, because we look at grocery margins are really, really small. They're they're like well under 10%, some even 5%. If you're a grocery store in the area and all they're going to do is steal everything you got, it don't make sense to be over there. So we just get left with the Arab store, right? And whatever they got to serve. So that's one of the downsides. So we got to really teach our people better. That is, when we come in to offer the solution, we got to try to make it work because ain't nobody else going to come up with no solution. So that's why you got whole areas of the city you can't even get fresh food because they won't put a grocery store over there. It's very, very unfortunate. Yeah, they closing Atlantic Station, which is weird to me. The Publix is leaving, which is weird, but I don't know. I never really liked the Atlantic Station like that. I didn't know it was kind of I never liked the parking. Before they ever had the issues, I felt like it was a bad look. Yeah, Herman Russell. So Herman Russell's home is still there. I don't know if they still live in it, but it's still there in Collier Heights. It's real, real nice. It's real nice. Some real nice homes over there. They're older. They're very nice and well taken care of, but the overall neighborhood is not what it used to be, because Collier Heights at one time was where black people that had a whole bunch of money lived at. And eventually over time, they just moved out. Yeah, so big up to On the Move. Yeah, you can DM me on IG and I'll be able to get back to you. I don't know why it's not showing the email. It should be there though. What's up to Erica? It says, gotta make sure that Danish man get his money. She need to market like crazy. Well, Erica, here's what I knew, and I don't want to really get into that situation too much. For her to be doing all that traveling, I never felt like she was really selling homes like that. Because if you really got your business going like that in Texas, I don't know how you can afford to always be on the road traveling unless you own the whole brokerage. So when I heard that story, I was like, well, she can't really be moving them, because I went to her Instagram and I see, okay, she do real estate. But I was like, is she really moving properties like that? If she always traveling, because she always on the road traveling, unless she got her, unless she got a team under her working for her, I didn't understand how she was doing it. But yeah, she got to do something. Much money she was giving that dude. She was breaking that dude off, but that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to make sure her Danish pimping stay, make sure he stay Rolls Royce riding and jet plane flying, because that's exactly what he was doing with her money. I could imagine asking a woman for that kind of money. Like, and look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't imagine that, but everybody different. What's up to Houston, Texas? Drop 16. I can show you homes that's been on this market over a year and they still won't drop the price. And I'm talking to an agent. I'm like, we need to bid in well under ask. And they like, well, that's what the last 4 homes that sold for in that market. I'm like, the home been on the market for over a year. This don't even make no sense. Either they trying to sell the home or they not. It's crazy out here, bro. You were very fortunate to get in when you got in, because this market out here is lopsided. So drop 16 says, opinion of values based on the comparable. What we think the future value is going to be based on developments in the area the next 5 years. Then we subtract immediate expenses, fixed and variable. That's a good model. So multi-KDB, life cycle of the components of the house must be taken into account. I worked in facility management and building asset management for nearly 20 years, 100%. I mean, that's what I believe, but everybody different, but I know how much it costs to fix a hot water heater. Same thing with an HVAC system, right? And we live here where I'm at, the weather's extreme. In Florida, you really don't need the heat like that. You can go without it. You do need AC. Here, you need heat and AC. So your HVAC system got to be up to speed, because you're going to run it and run it and run it and run it. Where in Florida, you can literally cut off your HVAC system certain times of the year and just open up your windows and be good. That's not easy to do here. So, people trying to sell homes with HVAC systems and they 25, 30, some even 40 years old. I mean, that thing's going to go out any day. Yeah, drop 16, but they got to let me negotiate then. They supposed to be the go-between. And they really supposed to be acting as my agent. But, we going to get it together. I ain't going to blame nobody but myself. We going to get it together. All right, so that looks like it's going to be it. Y'all stay safe, man. Stay encouraged. Have a happy Christmas. And, stay safe out there, because you never know what's going to happen, man. These people out here are like really, really weird. I'll talk to y'all later.